Hey everybody, it's Paul from LastLevelTech, and I'm back with a new video, an update video in fact. It's been a year since I last posted a video, and it was all about this device back then. It was the Zotac EN1070, where I stripped it down to the bare bones and replaced the CPU for an i7 6700T from the default i5 6400T that came with the device. And over the past year, a lot has happened to me personally with a family and moving house and everything else that I just have not had any time to dedicate much effort to my YouTube channel. But at the same time, I appreciate everybody that has liked and subscribed and commented and everything else on my videos in that period of time. And I've tried to answer as many queries as possible. And one of the devices that keeps getting reported on and questions asked about is this little device here. And they say, okay, look, we've seen you strip it down to the bare bones. We've seen you take the CPU out and put in a different one that we weren't sure whether it was compatible or not. And is it still working? And the answer is yes. A year later, the device is still working. It's still working like a champ. I can't really fault it. It's still one of my favorite devices, I must admit, for what it is, for the small form factor. And I'll show you now what we've done, and maybe I'll run through some videos and show you what games look like in today's world as well. So, first of all, from the front, it looks the same. From the top and the bottom, it looks slightly different. So if I twist it over now to the top, you'll see that I put in two holes at the top and opened with some grills and opened up some proper airflow into those fans for the GPU, which is on this side here, and the CPU, which is on this side. Because what I know, here's a massive copper heatsink you can see in there beside the CPU, and similarly on this side you can see the copper heatsink for the GPU. But what was happening was, even though there are air inlets on the side of the device, it was just being starved of air. It really was. It was hampering the system for what it was capable of, really. Now, I probably didn't do the greatest job of keeping the two holes centered. I probably rusted a little bit. If anything, I could probably have dropped this one down a little bit more. I can't drop this one up because you can see on this side I haven't actually cut in a complete circle. That's because right behind here is the foil part of the Wi-Fi antenna, which I didn't want to damage in any way. So I've kind of cut up as near as possible to it and then across. But I could have brought this one down to make it as level if I wanted to be completely symmetrical. But at the end of the day, it's in a TV cabinet. It doesn't really bother me that much. The main thing was these things are going to get airflow. Airflow is going to come straight in here. It's going to come straight back out. It's all going to be good. I haven't put any dust filters or anything on like that because it's quite simple to take apart and dust it out if I need to. But as you can see, there's no real dust in there. It's quite easy to blow dust in and with some compressed air or something to just blow the device out and clean it as easily as possible. But this made a massive difference. It really, really did. Because, like I say, the unit is so compact. It's really just so compact from Zotac. You can see it in my hands at the moment. That it was just being starved of air. And, every little helped, especially with this particular processor that I put in. So, I think in the next part of the video, I'll show you the BIOS and everything else. But yes, I have put in the i7 6700T. It's been working like a champ, even though I've had to BIOS update this about 4 or 5 times, especially recently with the Spectre Meltdown patches that have been released, that Zotac released for this particular system. I do run it without the turbo mode enabled, so it only goes to 2.8 gigahertz, but you do get the 4 cores and 8 threads of performance, which certainly helps games much more so than the i5, the 4-core i5 that was limited to 2.4 gigahertz. This goes to 2.8, and it does make the difference. The extra threads in particular, not so much more the bump in performance, but just having the extra threads certainly helps a lot of games these days. The GPU, which you can see under here, again, more oxygen or more air that goes in there, the better. If we switch to the underside, you can see something similar. I kind of just decided I'm going to put a little bit higher feet on the bottom, and I'm going to cut some grooves in here because I thought about, at one stage I did actually have an active fan on these, and it made a huge difference, as you would expect, but I didn't want to make it any more difficult than possible. And what I found was the USB ports tend to be active as soon as you put the power into the device. So if I was going to put USB sort of powered fans, active fans on here, connect them in via USB, I was hoping that, okay, well, as soon as I hit the button to turn the system on, USB will be activated. Turn the fans on, it'll all be good. But what I was finding was, even when the system was in a sleep state, the fans were still on, which I didn't really want. So I just went with the air inlet. But what we see on the other side is we've got the M.2 here, we've got the standard hard drive. Now this hard drive, it's a 2 terabyte Samsung drive, 9.5 millimeters, but it gets hot, it gets really hot. And now similarly, the M.2 gets hot. And of course, that heat that builds up in here, you can see it's a very, very thin amount of space that you've got between the motherboard, which is generally sitting about here, and then the top of the case, or the bottom of the case in this instance, from here. So everything's really, really compact in there again from Zotac. It's a marvel of what they've actually put together, but you're relying on these little air inlets here, which just doesn't suffice as far as I'm concerned. And any heat that builds up in here, and obviously, by proxy, just kind of filters through to the motherboard and then into the graphics card on the CPU as well. So I put some air inlets just to see if it would help. And again, if it was active cooling or something, it would certainly make a difference. But I didn't want to make the device any bigger or bulkier, and I think it helps, especially for the hard drives. The RAM and everything else is fine. It just sits there. It doesn't really cause too many issues. But just for any kind of air that kind of gets underneath the device that can keep any kind of coolness in there will certainly help from my experience. Again, no dust filters or anything on there. It's quite easy to just take off, screw there, pop that off, and then you can blow the dust out of the whole thing quite easily. But yeah, that's the device. It's still working like a champ. I can't complain at all. The performance is still ace. So why don't we go straight into a video where I'll show you some of the games running on 1080p and UHD resolutions. And yeah, we'll see what the performance is like in 2018. Okay, here we are in the BIOS screen of the Zotac EN1070. You can see here I've got the i7 6700T processor in there, speed of 2.8 gigahertz, and we've got the 32 gig of RAM. What I have done is the turbo mode is disabled, so this will overclock turbo mode up to, I think it's 3.6 gigahertz or something like that. But I've disabled it in the BIOS, because if I allow it to turbo up and the games start to use that extra turbo speed that's available, then it will cause extra heat and everything else. Which, what I found, especially during games, there isn't that much benefit really from going from 2.8 to 3.6 on a device like this. If anything, it causes more heat that you build up that you don't really need. So let's quit out of here. And I'll show you the boot menu process that I've got on this particular device at the moment. I think I showed this in the last video, but I'll quickly go through it again. So it's using Grub, Grub loader, and so it's a multi-platform device. You can do everything. I can go into SteamOS if I wanted to, and play a game on SteamOS. You'll see it boot up quite quickly here. I don't tend to use SteamOS. I think it's come out too much. It's come out recently in the past week or two that. I think the Steam hardware in particular has been dropped. I think Valve have said they're still developing SteamOS, but I don't know anybody in my circle of friends that use SteamOS as a gaming platform. That's for sure. It's a novelty, and I have it on here just purely out of interest, really, to see how it does. The major thing I have seen is this is a UHD TV. And I can't get it to go into UHD resolutions. I mean, if I go into settings and go to resolution, that's all you get, is adjust your screen size to fit. That's technically 1080p that it's running at the moment. But you get your Steam library. You can see your games and everything else that's installed or not installed, what you've played. I think I've got Rocket League on here at the moment. It plays fine. But it's not really what we're here for. So let's cancel and reboot the system again. And quickly show you what else is on here. Oh, there's a couple of Linux things on here if I needed to actually play around with Linux and stuff on here, like Ubuntu and everything else. If I just, not that they're installed, they're just booting off the ISO, so they're kind of I could boot the desktop for Ubuntu and or Clonezilla or Gparted or something if I wanted to. But LibreLec is on here as well, which is a derivative of Kodi. So this would be your media center if you wanted to do that kind of stuff. I haven't really got much on here. In fact, I've got nothing on here, but that plays, I have tested it. It plays all your 4K content, your UHD rips or your UHD downloads or whatever else you've got from YouTube or wherever else. It'll play H.264, H.265 without any major issue, all hardware accelerated. It does bitstream to your amplifier and everything else for your HD audio, like the newer ones like DTS:X and Dolby Atmos will get bitstream to those devices without any issue. But yeah, you can certainly use it for that if you wanted to. And I think if I use it primarily if I ever need to go away with something or take the device with me and I want to have a couple of movies on a hard drive, just plug them in and away it goes, no problem. It'll play them. Any kind of media format it generally has no real issue for. But the major real issue is obviously it's Windows 10. This is set to auto boot, so you see a countdown there. So after 5 seconds it will automatically boot into Windows 10. The device itself, I normally have it plugged in under my TV in a little cabinet, so I don't. I have like a wireless USB kind of mouse and keyboard thing built in, but I never really use it. I have a controller that's plugged into it wirelessly. So what I would recommend is this little utility here, which is Controller Companion. If I can get it to show. Hey, go back. Settings. Which you can find in Steam. Actually, I bought it from Steam. Go away, I don't need that. Which is here, but you can use it to control the mouse with your and press the buttons and everything else with your controller. So like A will be left mouse click, B will be right mouse click, I think it is, or no, X I think it is. But yeah, you can see there. It works quite well and allows you to have control over the device without having to get off your couch, really, apart from having to turn the system on, which is just a lazy thing, really. So if I cancel that. From a gaming perspective, let's try... Well, we've got Far Cry 5 here, which is relatively recent in the past couple of weeks, maybe a month, that's come out. So what I'll do first of all is just show you as well that this system, if I do the info on this TV, you can see it's in UHD mode at the moment, but we're going to turn HDR on, and it causes all kinds of havoc with Windows because Windows gets a bit dull on the desktop side, but when you run the games, because Windows is terrible with HDR at the moment, I'm hoping that the next spring update that they release, whenever that comes out, that actually fixes some of the issues that are related to HDR on the desktop. From the gaming perspective, if you enable HDR and then start your game will then play fine in HDR, which I'll show you now in a second with Far Cry. The two games that I have that support HDR that I know of, although actually 3, I think Hitman supports it as well, is Far Cry 5 and Forza 7. I haven't got Forza 7 installed on here anymore. I did have it, but yeah, Far Cry 5 will show you now when it goes in. I'll show you that the TV does pick it up as HDR. Again, the limiting factor, like I said before in the video, previous part of the video where I showed you the hard drive and everything else, is the hard drive is the limiting factor. The performance of that hard drive. But I need the space. I need the 2 terabytes of space on there if I want to have any kind of usable kind of usage for the games. So we've got the overlay for Riva Tuner and the MSI Afterburner on here. Quickly, if I show you the info, you can see you've got HDR. It's in HD at the moment, 1920 by 1080p. This is a UHD TV. Does that actually show on the video correctly? Let me just see. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So let me just adjust the video slightly so we're seeing things a little bit there. That's it. We'll just wait for this to load. So yeah, the Riva Tuner and the MSI Afterburner. I'm using a camera to record this rather than on my phone, actually, rather than using like something like Shadow Play or anything else, because I don't want to have any kind of negative performance from trying to record a video to that hard drive, because I think it would cause issues loading and also on the performance of the device itself. So this is kind of the easiest way to give you a true reflection of what everything is like. So yeah, we're in, let's go to options at the moment. What have we got here? So we're in 1080p at the moment. HDR is on, and we're in everything as ultra. So maxing everything out. So I'll just continue the game at 1080p, and then I'll put it into UHD mode, just quite quickly to see. So remember, this is a small little device. It's smaller than an Xbox One. It's smaller than a PS4. but it's packing a hell of a lot more power. So we can see the what have we got at the moment. So it's 30 frames per second. We can see how much memory is being used on the system. So we're at 6 gig of the 32, so we're well inside that. It doesn't need 32 gig if I'm honest. You could easily just stick. I wouldn't recommend 8. I'd probably stick with 16 as a minimum. But you probably don't need to go any higher than that. So the CPU is at 2.8 gigahertz, and now we're in the game. Right. So GTX 1070, you can see, is at 82% usage. We're running at 57 degrees and 1.5, 1.6 gigahertz. And this is at everything at ultra. This is higher settings than you'd get on console. And what we're running, 64, 65, 70, 73, 78, 79 frames per second. Have absolutely no problem running around the world, doing stuff, shooting animals with my guns. What have we got? Let's bazooka something. Hello. Whoops, missed it. Don't come back. You're only gonna get killed. There you go. Way flying. Damaged skin. Oh well. Yeah, 73. So we're at ultra. We're at 1080p. We're well over the 60 frames per second. I could VSync this and have no issues at all. Absolutely beautiful game. If I stress test it, maybe go into the... So we're locked at 60 on here because I think this part is actually VSynced in the game. But we could fast travel and airdrop. Bit of a spoiler there. Sorry for anybody who hasn't finished the game yet. But yeah, let's see what performance is like if I parachute in and like really push the draw distance out as we come in. And again, we're at 62 degrees, so 98% usage on the GPU. So we're 99%, so we're really pushing it. But 1.4 gigahertz, and we're not getting above 65 degrees at the moment. And typically I could play this for hours and maybe get to 68, 69 on this particular system. And the performance, 97 frames per second, which is pretty good. Let's go into the wingsuit. Try and really push it a little bit. You've got all the depth of field, the bloom, the motion blur, and everything else all going on, and it's having no real problems. I might die if I do this too low, but let's try it anyway. So we'll drop the frames down, still well above 60. And parachute. And yeah, let's land. Absolutely no problem. And I've played this with multiple people, multiple enemies on the screen, big explosions, particle effects, everything. It doesn't falter. Absolutely no problem. And I can barely hear the system. The system is on in front of me, about 5 feet away from me. I can barely hear it, which is good. And that's my dog choking up, which is good as well. Okay, so let's push this out to UHD. Let's see what happens with that. Is it capable of doing a UHD resolution? Apply the changes. So now we should see we're at HDR UHD according to the TV, which you can see there. If I just click OK on that, and info on this television, and there you can see at the top right hand corner HDR UHD resolution. So what does that do to my frames per second? So we're now into 30, 29, 28. So everything again is maxed out on ultra, and we're easily hitting 30 frames per second. 99% GPU usage again, 40% CPU usage, but we're at 28 frames per second. I'm not seeing it 27. It's not really going a lot lower than that. Again, I could go in and maybe drop it down from TXAA to FXAA, or maybe drop the shadows down from ultra down to high or medium or whatever else, just to maintain that performance and put it on a VSync of 30 frames per second, and you've got exactly what you're getting, or probably even better than what you're getting on an Xbox One X or any other console that's out there at the moment, without major issue, and still playing the game. Let's do an explosion and see if that has a major issue. Nope. Let's try and drop down from the map. Let's go over here. Ray's airdrop from there. A beautiful looking game, to be fair. And and it doesn't actually use that much video memory, which is interesting. Only 4 gig, 5 gig of video memory. But yeah, 33 frames per second, all at UHD. A tiny little box, and we're running at 66 degrees centigrade, 63 on the processor. Like that 100% on the GPU we just saw there, it's been absolutely maxed out at the moment. If I come right down over here, you can see it's still hovering around 32 frames per second, 30 frames per second. You know, no problem. So the odd spike here and there, but apart from that, it's perfectly playable at all these higher resolutions. Boom. And yeah, that's what our latest game, what, that only came about a month ago or something like that, Far Cry 5. What that actually looks like. Let's jump in the water and see what happens. Yeah, still maintaining the same performance. Let's go back up. And yeah, that's one of the latest games that's out now at the moment in early 2018, and UHD 30 frames per second is definitely possible. You know, you can see it at everything at ultra. I can say, like I say, drop a couple of seconds down, you could easily maintain that at VSynced and have a very happy gaming experience. Or lower resolution, 1080p 60 is more than possible. Absolutely no problem. So let's quit the desktop on Far Cry. Come on, come on. That's fine. I don't need that. That's all right. Again, a CPU-Z. Let's, if I just quickly show this, you can see, just to prove again, it is running that processor. There you go. That's the 6700T. Oops, I don't want MSI Afterburner. Nope, go away. And the GPU, you can see as well beside it. Is there, and you can see it's got a higher shader count. It's got 2048 unified shaders. I think it's 1980 or 1950 shaders that are on a desktop equivalent GTX 1070. So you get the higher shaders, the more shaders on the actual on this part of the GTX 1070, but you get the GPU clock, which is a little bit lower. It's 1.443 megahertz. I think the other one's 1.5, 1.6 as a default, and then maybe the boost goes up to 1.8, whereas this one goes to 1.645. But I have seen, which I'll show you now, I have seen this one run at 1.8 and higher sometimes, depending on the scenario. But generally, when it's been pushed, you know, you're looking at 1.4, 1.3 to 1.5, around that kind of area, gigahertz for the speed of the GPU. And again, having the extra cooling, having the openness of the chassis, allowing it to have some air to get through to the fans and to the heat sinks and everything else, all means that it maintains that performance level a lot more than probably what it would have done before. Well, actually, it does, because that's the reason I cut it open, because that was one of the major bottlenecks I was noticing with the system. But let's just try this. This is something I still have installed on here. It's received a lot of patches and everything else since. One of the big things that came out about this at the time was they patched the core counts that's used on the CPU. I think initially it was only using one core, so it was being crippled by that, especially when you went into areas like in Australia, I think, on the map. But now they've patched it up since, and it uses multiple cores on the CPU side as well, so you get better performance. I'm not entirely sure what's this set as at the moment. So it's at UHD at the moment. Oops, I forgot to come back out of that. There we go. Apologies. Okay, so we're at UHD. Everything's maxed out. We're using 8x MSAA, which is probably too high considering for this particular system. I could probably drop that down to 4, but we just want to show you the performance, what it's like at UHD resolution, and see what happens. Takes a minute or so to load up, and let's go. Come on. So again, that i5 I was amazed at once I changed the i5 to the i7 at just how much of a bottleneck that i5 was to the GPU itself. It just wasn't capable of feeding the GPU with as much information as possible to really maximize the performance of the GPU. I'm guessing they put that in. They kind of, Zotac probably thought, well, we'll reach a happy medium by starving the GPU a little bit of performance, because we don't want it to get as hot as it probably would have done. Especially, you know, because I've used the liquid metal and everything else on there for the thermal solution, which certainly they didn't use before. It was like some cheap old thermal paste. But a combination of all those things, of opening up the chassis top and bottom, and the liquid metal on the GPU and also on the CPU, it just all helped to make what I consider to be, in 2017, 2018, the ultimate little performance GPU system. You know, I can do whatever, you know, I want on it, you know, from a gaming perspective. So it's probably difficult to see that number, but we're on UHD, we're on 41 frames per second at the moment, 37, 39, 38, 39. Typical would have to be a blue background. There you go, 41. You can probably see as I move around the world here, 37. So this little system, you know, I could lock this VSync at 30 frames per second at UHD, or I could drop some settings down maybe to get the higher frame rates, but easily at UHD, this is 45, 44. You know, there would be no problem getting a locked 30 frames per second on this at the moment. Absolutely no problem at all. We could go into the... Can I change the world map? Never mind the world map. We could change it to 1080p and see what that does. Again, everything maxed out. Where are we at? 1080p. Accept. And we're... Again, everything's maxed out at Ultra. And we're at 70. 68, 78, 79, 72 frames per second. You know, 94%, 98% GPU usage, 68 degrees, 1.5 gigahertz. Still, well, you know, still below 70. You know, might after a couple of hours, maybe we'll hit 70, maybe. But we don't get anywhere near that threshold of 85 degrees, 95 frames per second. You know, 84, 83, 73, 70, you know, we're still well above the 60 frames per second limit that's on here. It's got some kind of nice adaptive VSync or something going on here, because it doesn't frame tear as much as I thought it might as I go into the water, which is good. But you can see the frames per second there. It's probably a little bit easier to see on that orange background, 83 frames per second. So simply stunning performance really from this little device in today's gaming market, really. So 1080p, if you're running a 1080p or maybe even 1440p, you know, 60 frames per second is easily obtainable, I'd say, in this system. If you're pushing UHD, then you're probably looking at the higher settings, you're probably looking at 30 frames per second to lock it, unless you're using some kind of G-Sync monitor to avoid the stutter and screen tear you might get. But I prefer either a locked 30 or a locked 60. It's one or the other. I don't like variable frame rates on a monitor that doesn't cater for them, to be honest. But yeah, that's Forza Horizon 3. I don't know what else I've got installed on here. So what might be big that's useful? Battlefield 1, Battlefront 2. Let's try Battlefield 1. I haven't played this in a while. Use cloud data. It's fine. I don't even know what this is going to like, to be honest, but we'll check it out as a shooter. So the fan definitely got a bit louder there, but it's not a problem. It's certainly no different than maybe what I've had before with my PlayStation 4 when I had a PlayStation 4, the old one, not the Pro. I haven't got a Pro or an Xbox One X, but the old PlayStation, certainly that used to get quite loud playing some games on it. Okay, what have we got on this? 200 frames per second. I'll take that. Come on. All right. A 4-barreled handgun. Nice. Okay. Come on. Update required. You need to uninstall these unit for update to play online. Okay, update. How long is that going to take? Yeah, okay, done. That's fine. Probably should have turned off HDR. Is that still on? Yeah, HDR still on. So this game doesn't support HDR, to my knowledge anyway. Unless they updated it since. Okay, fine. Let's have a look. Where are the settings in this game again? I cannot remember. More. Is it? Yeah, okay. Options. Video. So we're running at 1080p at the moment. I think they're advanced. Oh, there's HDR in this game. Wow. Amazing. I didn't think there was. So resolution scale is 125%. Everything's at ultra. Okay. Let's go into a game and see what happens. It's fine. Let's go into the campaign. Quickly. Where are we at? I don't even know which one to pick, but let's go with one of these. And let's try this one. Let's see what happens. All I want to do is just kind of show you the performance. I think the colors are a little bit washed out on this at the moment because of the HDR setting, but oh god, I'm probably giving away the game. No, load faster. Come on. I thought I would like this game more than I did. I don't know. It didn't hit it off with me. I think PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is probably the game I play a little bit too much these days. Come on, jeez, how long is it gonna take to load? Yeah. Okay, come on. Well, if I'd known it was going to take this long, I wouldn't have probably played it, to be honest. I would have tried something else. I suppose it does give you a good example of what I'm talking about with the loading speed sometimes from that hard drive. Certain games are fine, like Far Cry wasn't too bad, as you saw. Certainly this seems to be taking a little bit longer. That hard drive, we're using 8 gig of RAM on the system at the moment. Okay, skip. Go away. Right, we're in game. So we're at 69 or 74. Can I get out of this? Yeah, okay. New objective, right. Yeah, we've got all the effects. You can see all the fog effects and everything else going on around. 80 frames per second, 78. All at ultra. So this is at 1080p. I don't really want to get engaged with everybody because I don't really know how to play this game with the controller, to be honest. But let's go to options and video and change this up to UHD 3840 60 hertz and apply. Okay, back. Right, 25 frames per second. So, and we're using 99% of the GPU. You can certainly see this is being pushed by this game, absolutely. So you can see that it's pushing it down to 1.3, 1.2 gigahertz, the amount of workload it has to get through. It's putting a lot of strain on the GPU itself, 25 frames per second. So this is probably a good example of a game that... what's actually the resolution scaling was set to 125%. Why was it set to that? Let's put that right back down to 100. That's probably a bad thing. Let's go to here and back and back and back. Yeah, there we go. And pushes it back up. 35 frames per second. So there you go. You got UHD resolution over 30 frames per second again. So you're getting better than a console experience with the extra details and everything else. And it's properly pushing the GPU at 99% again. 67 degrees on the core, which is pretty good. I can't remember how to do anything in this game. How do I get a sights up or anything else? I'm just gonna run and gun. Let's see what happens. Oh, is that somebody there? Yep. Dead. Oh god, I think I'm gonna die. Yep, dead. 35 frames per second, so it's pretty consistently over the 30 frames per second mark anyway at UHD resolution, and over the 60 frames per second mark at UHD resolution. So it's consistent with what we're seeing with other games, which is good. And again, because it's a PC, you get all the other options to go in and say you want to cut down VSync or MSAA or something else, or shadows or something, to get performance and still maintain that high resolution. So we can quit that game, and I think that's probably about all I can show, or I should show, really, for now. I think it pretty much gives you a demonstration of everything about the system, and yeah, hopefully that's, I know it's been a year. I might try and do some more videos when I can. Like I say, I've got a family now, and that's taken up a lot more of my time now, as expected, and moved house and everything else, moved country, there's lots of different things. So it's been a hectic 12 to 18 months. So I'll try and do what I can do for my channel and keep it going. But I really do appreciate everybody that has subscribed and has kept watching my videos, and the feedback I keep getting. Like I say, I'm doing this video because a lot of people have come and keep messaging me and saying, like, what did you use for thermal compound, or is it still working? Would you recommend I try this with my system or my other variety of Zotac? I know there are other versions out there, like the water-cooled EN1080's or the TN80T's or whatever they are now. They're all good, don't get me wrong. I really love them. But from this one, it's one power supply. It's 175 watts of power, 180 watts of power. The other ones, I think, require 2 power supplies. And this is just perfectly the best solution I've seen for portability and everything else in power. But yeah, thanks for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't, give it a thumbs up. I don't mind. Subscribe, that would be even better. I really do appreciate all that. If you don't like the video, give it a thumbs down. I appreciate any kind of feedback, honestly. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys soon, and thanks again. Bye.